All righty. Well, welcome to all of you who serve in some capacity of youth and family ministry, primarily with middle schoolers and high schoolers. This segment, we really wanted to make a showcase. And so what we're going to be doing for the next 45 minutes is we're going to invite 3 different youth and family ministries up on the stage. I'm going to interview them and really highlight different strengths that they have. And so we've chosen 3 different structure, size, and resource youth and family ministries in hopes that maybe you can identify with one of those. But the reason we wanted to start all together is I know even in interviewing these different ministries to prepare for this segment, I've learned a lot and like, oh, that's a great idea. So no matter what size you are, there's probably something you can take from each and to learn from each and hearing new ideas. I love coming to these conferences because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so we get in the same room and like, oh, that's a great idea. I've never thought about doing it that way. So hopefully we can learn from them. Maybe you can find, like if an idea that they share, or maybe they're young parents like you, or maybe they wear multiple hats like you can get their information even, whether you can connect with them here, or even when you go home on Zoom. You know, there's ways that we can continue learning from one another, connecting and networking with one another. Then after this segment is we want to hear from you. And so we're going to break up into 3 different spaces and have guided discussions based on your size, structure, resources. So whatever one of these 3 different, showcase, highlight ministries that you feel like, okay, that's kind of what it looks like for me, they're going to facilitate a discussion for you. They're not going to be answering your questions, but they're going to help you all to discuss amongst yourselves what's working, what's not working, and brainstorm a discussion with people that have the most similar ministry to you. So hopefully that makes sense. That's what we're going to be doing for the next 2 hours. So first up, I would like to invite Brandon and Lauren Yee from Austin, Texas. Thanks, guys, for joining us. So Brandon and Lauren have served in Austin, Texas in youth and family ministry for about 3 years. Before that, they served in youth and family ministry in Boston and Virginia as well. Brandon and Lauren both grew up in our family of churches and have been married for 6 years. Time flies, can't believe that. I knew them when they were single and younger than that. And in ministry for 7 years, so you dated in ministry, a unique experience, which I share. So the Austin church, so you all know, is a church of about 400 members. It has 3 different locations, a staff of 18, and you guys, along with 1 intern, serve primarily with youth and family ministry. Sounds like that person's right over there. So the 3 of you together serve the teens, and you have 55 teens in your church, which is 7th through 12th graders, and primarily all those teens, almost all of them are in 1 location, which is primarily suburban. So the first question I wanted to ask you guys is, as you've moved from Virginia to Boston, now to Texas, those are very different church cultures, populations. How has ministry shifted for you as you've moved from city to city, and how have you guys had to learn and evolve how you do youth and family ministry?
Yeah, well, it's great to meet all of you. Very, very grateful to be here. I think one of the things that we've seen throughout is even though each place has had its own very particular culture and very particular kind of I think just vibe in general, we have found that basically there are common threads that each place that we have been at, which have all been very different, they all kind of need, and they all kind of need it from us in terms of our leadership. One of the things, as we've spent more and more time in these different places, we've just known, and this is not going to be rocket science, but I do think it's helpful to see that no matter where you are, we have found that the teens that have done really well, they've responded to our mentorship and our teaching and our leadership when we've treated them like individuals and shown them respect as people. Amen. Right? Respect as people on their own, and not just, hey, you're a kid that doesn't know anything because you're 14. But hey, these things that you're going through are very valid. And that goes across class lines, across, economic, whatever you want to say. All of those things are all very, very real.
So yeah, I think for us as we've moved and grown and had more experience, the biggest change for us has just been growing in our confidence of how to establish and build that kind of culture, like Brandon said, that has respect for everyone, and also creating spaces where the teens can be honest with how they're feeling, what they're going through, can be in like a judgment-free zone, and not only confidence for us to create that culture and that we show them, but the expectation that that's how they should treat each other, and creating that space themselves. I also feel like we've grown a lot in our communication with our needs as youth ministers, as I'm sure you guys can relate, having that partnership, that need for partnership with the leadership of the church or elders, and communicating when, hey, we need help with resources for parenting or youth ministry workers or funding for, different activities, things like that.
That's great. As we've spoken in preparation for this class and just knowing you guys, I think one thing I admire is your focus on creating safe spaces for your teens and your families. And we know Austin's weird. If you know anything about Austin, they're trying to keep it weird. So how do you guys work to create a safe space where teens can really be honest, but also what a family is going through, maybe with the struggles of their individual teen, that they're coming to you guys feeling like they are well received and that it's safe?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that we'll share even in this, but I think the largest thing that has helped is just a culture of vulnerability from the public facing like us, and really encouraging that amongst even the conversations we'll have in private, right? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I think it's helpful when people see it on a large scale, right? Wow, you're talking to 400 people and you're being vulnerable there, so they can assume that about you and know part of who you are. And then it's less scary for them to be able to tell you what's going on because they know about you. But that also works and is really important in our relationship with the parents as well, of just being like, hey, we're not against each other. This is kind of where I'm at. I've had to have very, like Bethany said, scary conversations with grown men, right? Who are just like these dads, who I'm just like, hey man, this was actually really disrespectful. Or hey, like, I know you really love your kid, but like, I'm a person too, and I'm trying really hard. And it's easier just to be like that, like, I'm sorry, okay, cool, I'll just move on. But that level of vulnerability actually then gets to the places where you realize you're actually working together. But in a couple of different things, we've just really tried to focus on having intentional times with facilitators. So we can talk a lot about, man, we want to have a safe space here, but what are we doing to actually get there? And how are we making that happen in terms of building culture? One of the best things we ever did, Lauren will tell you about.
Well, what I love too about our size ministry, this kind of mid-size, is that we have the ability as the youth and family leaders to have personal relationships with all the kids and the parents. They know us, so that helps a lot too in creating that dynamic. So one time we had a parent and teen event, and there's a program, a website, I think it's called Poll Everywhere, where you can do live polling of the audience in the moment. And we use that to facilitate conversations with the family, where we ask simple questions like, teens, this is for the teens to answer. Do you feel like your parents listen to you? Yes or no? And then the parents could see, where it was. And obviously it was a little, risky, but it was a great tool in facilitating some conversations. And then we could do the reverse as well, of like, parents, what do you feel about your teen? And then in the family, they could talk, or a couple families together. Hey, why do you think that this was the answer? Whether or not that's personally how you answered or not, the kids didn't have to out themselves. But why do you think that 80% of teens don't feel like their parents listen to them? And then they could have that conversation. So that was a really cool, and then we also would have a teen worker, teen leader in that, setting to help facilitate if we felt like, maybe someone's voice is getting a little too loud or they didn't feel like they were listening. That was a perfect moment to, demonstrate how we can listen, how we can create that safe space. We also, in our midweek schedule, I think it's important to, figure out what works for your church, for your group. We kind of reevaluated, why are we doing midweek? How do we need to do it? Does it need to look a certain kind of way? currently, and about for the past year, we've been on this A-B midweek rotation, where on A weeks, the kids have a choice of 2 lessons that they could hear, so that they get to choose what they want to learn about. And then on the B week, they just have fun. They just come, they bring their homework, sometimes they play volleyball, we have snacks, there's music, they just chill. And Brandon offers, again, an optional questions with Brandon. He has a little fireplace on the TV, we have tea. And the kids can come and literally ask questions about anything, whether it's spiritual, whether it's like advice about boys, anything. And they've really enjoyed that. And there's been a lot of kids that I think would have maybe left the teen ministry or didn't feel like the teen ministry was for them, but because they got to come and like ask those difficult questions and really challenge, different things that they're wrestling with and talk about them, that really like kept them engaged. So different like spaces like that where the kids get to choose what they want to learn, and they can, based on their needs, what they're feeling, kind of participate in that way.
Well, I think that's really cool. I think what's admirable about what you guys are doing is just not just creating a safe place, but a safe place to be really vulnerable and deep, and have both of those. So your guys' structure, you mentioned the midweeks. I think it's inspiring post-pandemic that you guys do Wednesday midweeks every Wednesday, and that you do this A-B, and alongside with those, it sounds like some of those Wednesdays have a parenting devotional. You guys rent a building, so you have access to it, so that's helpful. Not everyone has that. But you also do Saturday night devos, and it's a fun game time for the whole ministry. You do those 3 times a month. You do quarterly a parent and teen event or devotional together. You also do the typical annual things, teen camp, teen prom, a fall retreat, or rally. Something interesting that you guys do, which you can ask them about offline, is a 10-week internship where the campus interns with the youth and family, which I think is really neat. So you guys are doing a lot. I'm like,
we don't
wow.
have kids.
You don't have kids, yes. So you guys are doing a lot, but you're asking, not just you guys are doing a lot, you're asking your families to do a lot. So you're meeting, it sounds like almost every Wednesday and Saturday. So with getting the teens together almost twice a week, how do you feel like that affects your attendance? Do you feel like people pick one or the other? And how do you keep it balanced with the fun and the Bible?
Yeah, so Austin is a fairly large city, and we do have teens that could live, over an hour apart. Like you said, most of them are in one region, but there are a couple teens that, live almost in 45 minutes away. And so when they've done midweeks, so it's a little bit, part of the rhythm, but we found it's really helped our ministry like grow a lot closer to each other. Even when I look at, I have like 10 sophomore girls, and when I think about a couple years ago, they weren't close friends, and I asked them like, how'd you guys get so close? It's because they saw each other twice a week for years, and now they're all so tight. And anytime that they can't get a ride or anything like that, they're so bummed out. They don't want to miss events because it's fun, and they're there with their best friends. So it's helped change our culture as well very quickly because they're meeting so regularly. Also, again, for us in Texas, kids can get their license at 15. So that helps that a lot of our sophomores and up can drive themselves. But we really want to emphasize it's not about just you sit and listen to a lesson together and that's it. Like they're doing life together. They're helping, it's so cute. You see like the seniors help the freshmen with their math homework, and like they're really doing life together and those kinds of things. So while it sounds like it is busy, again, because the A-B schedule, we only actually doing midweek lessons every other week. On the B week, we just get to like come and have fun and those kinds of things. So it has really helped the kids, helped their relationships, and even that group that has to drive further, those parents, they're happy, they're excited because their kids come and they have a good time, so they're willing to drive that 45 minutes twice a week. They carpool and those kinds of things.
Just really quickly, we're running out of time. In terms of like our perspective for us, we've seen that essentially we try and have a 70-30 perspective in terms of fun and spiritual. Now, back in my day, that was like not really okay. but because I think there's a fear, right? There's a fear that if you're not having lessons, like what are they going to know? How are they going to know about Jesus? I think a lot of these things happen through different ways than just someone teaching a lesson. And I'm okay. I'm relatively good at that. And my teen ministers were great, and I can't remember a single one of their lessons. Right? And that's a humbling thing. Makes me less offended when they don't remember mine. But I think there's a reality of like, man, there are other things other than just lessons and like times of worship and things like that will help people see Jesus. And so much of it is community. So yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. A lot to learn from Austin, so give it up for the Yees. Next, I'm going to invite up Ross Lippincott. Thank you, Ross, for joining me.
How's it going, everybody? Thanks,
So
Stephanie.
Ross is coming to us from New York City, and his beautiful wife and a good friend of mine was not able to make the journey, but I did interview both of them, so she partaked in the answering and the question forming of this. But Ross and Manami, they serve in New York. You guys live in Manhattan now, right?
We do. We live in Manhattan.
Okay. So they live in Manhattan and have been doing youth and family ministry and worship ministry for more than 10 years now. Both Ross and Manami were disciples in their teen years. You guys are married now with 3 kids. They're 7, 5, and 1.
Kids, yep.
So you guys have
Which is
your
why she's not here right
hands
now.
full.
and
She has her
I
hands
wish she
full with
was,
them.
but yeah.
And you guys are taking on a couple extra roles right now. So
Yep.
it's a lot for the Lippincotts. But so grateful for you guys. So you understand that the New York City church structure, the New York City Church of Christ, is that your name? New York City Church of Christ?
It's the New York City Church of Christ. In Manhattan, we're the Big Apple Church.
Okay, Big Apple Church. 2,500 members. There are 10 locations and diverse in every way. So you guys have some of your locations are the New Jersey suburbs, but as you guys live and lead in Manhattan, you have urban, suburban, all of it, 10 different locations, one church.
Yes.
It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have 240 teens in your purview. There's recently it was 4, but now 6 youth and family staff, correct?
Yep.
To cover those 10 churches, so you're mostly volunteer-led, and each of those 10 locations has its own identity and structure, led mostly by local leadership, and serve you guys primarily in your role as the top dog of the youth and family. Serve mostly as liaison, representative advocate for the volunteers and the other 4 youth and family staff members.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question I wanted to pose to you is, although we hear, wow, you guys have 6 youth and family staff in New York, that's amazing, but then when you do the ratio, 6 to 240 teens, 10 locations, you guys are still primarily volunteer-led. So do you have any advice for us about recruiting volunteers and empowering our volunteers to lead the youth and family ministry?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's funny because our staff had lunch together and had a good laugh about this because it could seem like a lot of staff, but it's a lot of kids. And actually, it just was 4 of us until recently Kinson and Shayla Desir moved from Georgia to be up with us, and we're so grateful to have them. But yeah, I think that, you know, for us, we really heavily depend upon volunteers. We appreciate our volunteers. We build them up. We encourage them. And I think a big first thing is just, you know, we really focus on how to identify the volunteers. A big way is that in different regions, we've encouraged mentoring programs. And through doing mentoring, it helps us kind of identify, you know, who might be interested in being a youth worker. Sometimes those mentors, it's encouraging because some people can feel like, I don't want to be a teen worker, and that's a lot of work, and I got to drive those kids all over the place, and I have to do all this stuff. But we talk about, hey, maybe try out being a mentor for a little bit, and then you can usually identify through that. There might be some people who really do have a gift or a desire to serve in that way. You know, so I think that also when we're looking to identify youth workers, it's really important to us that we're looking for spiritual people. Number one. And so we really stress that even throughout our regions, that the biggest priority is someone who's spiritual. And so I think in that identification process, we're looking for, and it doesn't matter, maybe they're a parent, they could be a younger single person. So we really believe in both and, that it's not just one kind of stage of life, but that it's, you know, different people helping. And then another big thing in identifying is really working with our church leaders and the regional leaders, because in a larger church with multiple regions, from far away I could think, oh, that person would be a great youth worker, but the people that are in that local church Sunday to Sunday are the best people to decide, hey, we really have a vision to have this person work with our youth. And so I think that, we're just looking to partner with our church leaders in that sense. And then I think we really want to inspire those people. Once we catch a vision for somebody who, we see they have a gift, and that's something that they, really do connect with the youth. And it'll be surprising sometimes. Like, there'll be people that you're like, I never had any idea that you would connect with teens, but the kids love them and they really work with them well. But then we really just try to build those people up and encourage them and cast a vision and say, like, you really have a gift here, and really try to inspire them to see how they can be utilized in the church to use their gifts and to serve in that way. And just encouraging them with how important it is, that crucial time in, a high schooler's life. To work with them, and just really trying to inspire them, because it is a lot of work as a volunteer. But you want to look for people who they desire to do it, that it's something that they want to do and that they have a heart for it.
Yeah, those are great insights there, and I love the partnering and really trusting the local leadership and partnering with them in that recruiting process. So your music has blessed many of our churches. I know in Philly, we saw the New York City Church Christ on a live stream service most Sundays. We use some of your guys' worship. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you for how you bless God's kingdom with all of your worship and serving not just the New York City Church in this way, but all of us as a family of churches. But do you have any advice, just briefly, juggling being a worship leader, youth and family ministry leader, and husband and dad? Like, how do you juggle? How do you do it?
When you guys figure it out, let me know. And, but first, thank you so much. That's encouraging and humbling. And, we just definitely, love serving with worship. And, I think, honestly, it is something I am still trying to figure out. We just had a baby, and so we went from 2 to 3. And so I think it's just it's constantly kind of, readjusting as our kids are adjusting. But I think that one of the biggest things that's been helping me is just to really think of it as, like, how can I streamline? I was feeling you with the different hats that you feel like you're wearing, and, how we're just doing a million different things sometimes, it feels like. But I think just trying to streamline rather than compartmentalize, and really try to see how can I, like, do multiple things at the same time, So recently we had a costume party with our youth ministry, and I was able to go and bring my daughter, and she dressed up, So whenever I can merge the things that I'm doing, I'm trying to do that. With our summer camp, our youth camp, just thinking about how can I, bring my role as a worship leader into that. And so this past year we had a worship night, the first night of camp with all of our campers, where our congregational worship team came out and we did like a worship concert the first night. And that was one of the most special memories from camp. And so just finding ways to kind of streamline those things. And then even at home, like, as you're learning, for me, learning a worship song, my kids are hearing that, and then they'll be singing that. And so rather than trying to be separate with the different things that I'm doing, I'm really trying to streamline it and, figure out how those things can be done together.
Quite a woven tapestry you're making there. Love that. So as we mentioned with the pandemic, and I know talking to you and Menominee, and we all know the pandemic hit New York especially hard. But also with all the social justice and social issues, the things that have rocked, especially this younger generation. Over the past couple years, your teens and families have been hit really hard. So how have you had to evolve to advocate and minister to the teens, but also to the families?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I definitely sit here like aware. I'm a white man, and I'm aware of that. I feel that, and I think that for me, just being aware and, seeing the importance of really empathizing, and being able to say, like, I don't understand that, but I love you and I care, and just kind of realizing that. I think the other thing that's really big for us in New York is really wanting to have a staff and a volunteer team that really represents our church. And so really advocating as far as our interns, our staff. I'm really proud of our staff. I love our staff, and I think we are diverse in many ways, but especially, we bring different perspectives and opinions, And I think just really promoting that diversity has been so important to me to advocate to train and hire people that do not look like me because it's so important for our youth to see people that look like them. And I think I've really learned representation matters and just the importance of having people that they can look up to and say, I can see myself, as a Christian. I can see myself doing that because I look up to this person. But then at the same time, being able for our youth to see all of us that we look different, but the unity that we have together and just how God glorifying that is, to see despite us having different skin colors, that we are united and that we, work together and love one another deeply.
Awesome. Those are great answers. So the New York Youth and Family Ministry structure is going to be different, obviously, from what maybe we typically experience. So each location does create its own calendar and schedule by region. Manami said that some are more active than others, but that once a month, every first Saturday, all the New York teens come together for Devo, and usually about 150 teens attend. But what I think is so special about that is that each location takes a turn leading that event, and then 2 of them are led by your youth and family staff. You do the typical annual events like the rest of us, teen camp, lock-ins, proms, a New York fun activity. You also do annual teen leader trainings. But I wanted you to expand one word in talking to you, Manami, that stood out to me was you kept saying ownership, ownership, ownership. And like the U's were talking about honesty and safety for you guys, it seems like your cornerstone, next to Jesus, of course, is ownership. And Amen. So, what have you guys done to create a culture of ownership, even especially with those first Saturdays, so that not only the teens but the families too can really own the ministry?
Oh, totally. It's funny, I grew up in the New York City church and grew up going to these teen devotionals. So I sat in those seats and I remember what it was like and even hearing my friends and, hey, we're driving all this way to come into the Bronx every month. And I think there were kids that feel like I come all this way, I sit, I listen, and then I leave. But I'm not really a part of this thing. And so, even as we, started to lead the youth and family ministry, one thing that in the past few years that we started to, want to see is that rather than kids just come and they sit and we talk to them, that they could really be a part of it. I think a lot of it came from doing teen-led conferences. We were blessed to work with Boston and have a great relationship with the Boston Church and our youth ministries. And every couple years before the pandemic, we would take turns hosting these teen-led conferences. And we saw the benefits when teens speak to other teens and how they really transfer conviction, how they really inspire each other. When, we could say one thing to them. It's kind of like when you're a parent and you say it, but then somebody else says it. And, you could say something to a teen, but when a teen says that same exact thing to another teen, it's like, they said this, and it's the most incredible thing. And I just learned, that I need to read my Bible. And it's like, wow, and I never told you that before. And so, I think that from realizing that and reading this great book, Sticky Faith, I think we started to have a vision for a youth ministry that was very inclusive, participatory, that our youth were a part of planning things. We also learned that one of the determining factors, and research shows this, in helping youth stay faithful into their adult years is how active they were in planning worship services. And I was really convicted because I'm not only am I a worship leader and I plan worship services, but I'm a youth leader. And so again, in streamlining those things, I can get them involved in planning these worship services. And so by doing that, they feel a sense of ownership and involvement. And so then we realize we've got a large multi-region church. We get together once a month. And so we can have different regions take turns planning the devotionals and hosting the devotionals. And it's something that, we took some time. We, worked with all of our volunteers in our youth worker meetings, and we talked about it. We pitched them the idea. We got feedback. It wasn't like we just said, we're going to do this, but we really kind of workshopped it with them. We created guidelines on how to, with your ministry, plan that devotional. And then we really encourage each ministry to make that planning time really the main event, because we could think about the devotional and the thing that we're doing as the show or the big thing, but that we talk about how the process is really what it's all about. because in planning the devotional together, the youth grow closer and they bond together. The other thing is that we decided we want to, make sure that whether a teen is a disciple or not, that they can be involved in planning the devotional and also implementing the devotional. Because a lot of these kids grew up in the church and can feel like once I hit a certain age, all of a sudden I'm excluded from participating. And we realized, well, then we're sending the opposite message we want to send to our kids. It's like we want them to stay here, but then we're telling them, no, you can't do this. And we're like, where's the heart? The first century church, it was a lot of singing in houses, and it was house churches. And I don't think there were people there saying, like, you're not allowed to sing, because you didn't get baptized yet. And so I think that we really we know which of them are baptized or not, and we really want to encourage them to participate. And even if it's them sharing about, this is what I get out of this scripture. Now we want to be very careful, and we have the adults really will vet the speakers and go through what they're sharing about and talking about. But it's a great chance for some of these kids to share about what they think about God or their, kind of perspectives. And it's been really special. Recently, the Long Island region had hosted in the beginning of October, and they did a phenomenal job. And they all dressed up all in white, and they were coordinated. And so it just brings a unity to each of our ministries, and then it encourages the different groups are able to encourage one another. And so we feel like it's a very Acts 2 approach to each part kind of bringing something, and it's really been fantastic. And we've actually seen more kids becoming Christians since we kind of made that change rather than just the adults doing all of it. We still plan our staff some of the devotionals, but again, getting them involved, we've seen huge benefits to that.
Well, I just wanted to say a special thank you to you and Manami. You obviously are pulled in many directions, have many talents, could have moved on from youth and family, for sticking in there with us and still being here. We need advocates like you for youth and family, so thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you, Bethany.
Last but not least, we have Adam and Carolina Lahr from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Well, thank you. You guys are our small church, but you're not actually that small, but you're on the smaller side of this showcase. So Adam and Carolina, they serve in Minneapolis doing youth and family. They've been there for 3 years. Carolina is Peruvian, but she was converted in the UK at 21 and has 15 plus years of ministry experience, mostly in Europe, but doing primarily singles and campus ministry. And Adam grew up in our family of churches, was converted as a teen in New England, and mostly was a lay leader, and this is your first time being in full-time ministry. So you guys got married and have been over there in Minneapolis, building your marriage, new family, and new life and career and all the things. So thank you for joining our larger youth and family. Just to explain how the Minneapolis church is structured, it is one location. It's 200 members with 30 teens, and when you guys came on, you were the newest addition to a brand new new staff build. Your church staff is a staff of 6, but all have joined the staff over the past 4 years. So you guys are kind of in this building, let's build it together, unity stage. So I feel like that's really unique and special, and primarily a suburban church. So, in our time chatting, the word that stood out to me listening to you guys is respect and empowerment, and how you guys have really worked so hard to show respect and even use the words like consent, allowing the teens to opt in and to choose this for themselves. So can you share with us how you guys have gone about making that a core part of your ministry, both for the teens but for the parents as well?
Yeah, for sure. First, I just want to thank you for letting us come up here. We've been in Minneapolis for barely over 2 years. So I've been on staff for barely over 2 years. I'm very humbled to be sharing here, but confident that the things
you
that
passed.
the things we're sharing that God
Star.
put it on our heart. But these are things that we are trying and testing. And some are working and some are not, and in our context, and may work in yours or not. But consent is important to us, just in our faith and in our lives within our community. While we don't use the word, we've never taught our teens about consent, but we model it because we have received And we've given unsolicited advice a lot in our time just as Christians, and we don't want to do that anymore. We want to ask consent. Would you like to hear, my thoughts? Could I give you a piece of advice? And especially when it comes to accountability, we don't want to give any of that without hold someone accountable without their consent. Would be something we would not want to do at all. And that's when our singles ministry and the people we disciple, and so it kind of comes through with the teens as well. And we have been intentionally this year planting and watering seeds of acceptance, of belonging. We just started with, we're like, you belong here. And just telling that and reiterating that, because we noticed and heard feedback from the parents that the kids didn't feel like, I don't want to go. I don't have any friends there. And these are, you go, man, haven't you grown up together? So many of them have, but the pandemic, just those friendships split. Not violently, but they faded. And so it was like, you belong here, you belong here. We also saw kids right, as soon as they started dating a boy or girl from school, they were like, well, I guess I can't go to church anymore. And we're like, no, you belong. Your boyfriend belongs, your girlfriend belongs, everyone is here. And we're talking about acceptance, and we're talking about vulnerability, and we're being, because, we know we want to help them also be welcoming. You have to be welcomed and be welcoming. You have to belong and accept. Being vulnerable is one half of the equation. Accepting vulnerability is another skill that we're trying to teach. And so we teach it, but we also just try to model it and help our parents. We talk to our parents about how much better modeling is than the lessons. And so if you model accepting your kids' wild ideas and theories and this and that, then they will accept what you share, right? If you model accepting their friends, they might be willing to spend time with your friends. But the modeling is important, and that's really one of our main focuses.
Thank you. So the Minneapolis Youth and Family schedule and structure is very different, which I love. That's why I love coming to these things. You hear all sorts of different ideas. Primarily it sounds because of people being geographically dispersed, but also you guys not having a regular meeting location. So on Sundays, one Sunday per month, the church members meet in family groups on Sundays, and one of those Sundays is also a teen worship every month. Midweeks are by family group because of that not having, a regular meeting location. And your Fridays are what you call Teen Connect, which maybe some of us would call devotional, but it's primarily just fun, community, culture building. Once a month you do a field trip or a fun outing together. In the summer you had 2 interns who were able to do more field games and fun stuff in the summer with the teens. And then like many of us, the same annual stuff, prom, camp. You guys connect with the Midwest some for those larger events. But like I said, I love learning. I was so fascinated by your teen worship that you do on Sundays. And so I was wondering if you guys could kind of expand on it, paint a picture for us. What is teen worship on Sundays once a month? And how are you incorporating some of those spiritual disciplines into those services to make them really deep and meaningful?
Yeah, we're learning in the process. We're listening, doing our best to listen and to observe where the kids are at. Sundays, we realized that whenever we had a teen devo and we planned something super fun, sometimes we will have the parents host, and it was wonderful, but it would be hard to get their attention to then let's do a spiritual lesson here. And so we decided to do kind of a different schedule, and that's where the Sunday services started. We do it every month, sometimes twice a month. It depends on what's going on. And we have a separate classroom, and the teens will lead the singing and the praise at the beginning. And they love doing that, talking about ownership, like Rose was sharing. But we also have a group that at different levels of ability and maturity. So we try to keep the lessons small And one of the things that we do to start each one of the Sunday services that we have with the teens is a moment of silent meditation. It takes like 2 minutes. We focus on a word and maybe a psalm, a scripture, and a word like acceptance or goodness. And we teach the teens to be silent and meditate on that one word, that one verse in a psalm. At the beginning, it was awkward, and we hear some giggles. But I think that the more we do it, this is just part of our worship, and it's been wonderful to see how we don't have to collect cell phones on Sunday because they're connecting with God and with each other, and that's I much rather like doing this than having to kind of collect phones and don't be distracted, but it helps us all to center ourselves and to calm us down also, because we all come with a lot of thoughts and things that are happening and family things, work things. Anyway, so we do that every Sunday when we're together. And at the end of the service, and we'll talk a little bit about what we do specifically in the service, but at the end of the service, we all pray. But what we do is we do a popcorn prayer based on what we've talked about. Again, the service is a conversation. It's not like we're standing there just preaching at them the whole time. It's a conversation. We talk to each other. They discuss with each other. At the end of the time, we have a popcorn prayer. We give them kind of like a template of like a phrase, a sentence, or a paragraph where they pray the same prayer, but they have to fill in the blanks. And this is where we've seen the most growth in their vulnerability. Just personalizing the prayer, just talking about like an emotion or something that is happening in their lives. And we hear less and less repetition. You know how they begin and they're like, yeah, the same as that person, right? But like now they're just in their prayers, we can hear that they are connecting with the scriptures and what the message of Jesus is saying. And that's moving and that's encouraging, and it's benefited our ministry a lot.
Yeah, and the spiritual disciplines are very important to us in what we teach and help them practice, because we want to teach them, we don't want to teach them how and why to get baptized as much as we want to teach them how and why to live in the kingdom. And the spiritual disciplines are how we live within the kingdom, and as we talk to them, they train us to think like the Father, to hear the Spirit, and to live like Jesus. And so our retreat, our fall retreat, it was spiritual disciplines. And we had 5 spiritual disciplines, and they all had their own little class that they could go and pick, and they rotated around the 5, and we talked about prayer, study, silence, service, and confession as spiritual disciplines, and how each one trains us in those ways to think like the Father, to hear the Spirit, and to live like Jesus. Because, right, we know any that is spiritual formation, forming us to be like Jesus through these practices. We want to hand those to them more than the proof texts for baptism, and then say, okay, yes, gotcha. So those are important. And the meditation and the popcorn prayer helps them practice it in really easy and tangible ways.
Awesome. Well, your group of teens there, you described them as a very introverted bunch. And so, I love how you guys have really structured your ministry to meet the needs. I think this died. To meet the needs of your ministry, and especially with a large portion of your ministry being special needs. So you do have a fair portion of those teens who do have special needs. So can you share with us, I think you have some already, but anything you want to expand on in terms of how you've structured it so that your ministry is effective for the group you're working with?
Thank you. Yes, so obviously we want all of the teens, because we have 7th through 12th grade, and there are a lot of difference in those ages, right? And so we want them to interact. We want the older ones to be, mentoring the younger ones, or just being friends, and the younger ones to feel included by the older ones. But also we know that they have very different needs. So what we do on Sundays is we follow a pattern of, like, we have a 5-minute thought from scripture, and then we have a 10-minute discussion by grades, and then another 5-minute thought and discussion 3 times. And that's how our service, because we notice as well with the children, they are children still, the teens who are introverted, they would not share in a big group. We ask a question and it's like crickets. But if they were in smaller groups, there's a lot more that comes out of them. There's a lot. They feel more comfortable. They have a lot of things to say, and they say good things. And so we started doing that more and more, just small group discussions. We're reading the Bible together. We're discussing the Word, allowing the Spirit to work in our hearts in smaller groups. And that's one of the things that we found helpful. When we do fun activities, but sometimes, of course, they like competition. So we have competitive games. So what we do is we have smaller groups, but like representatives of each grade in each group, so that it's fair, but also that that helps all of them get to know each other better, and to deepen their friendships, and to have a laugh together.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's it. That reason for segregating by grade for the discussions is because our older teens had said, like, it's just hard to talk to the 7th grader about this subject. Like, they don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what they're doing. And so those discussions are generally, we'll have an adult there, like, kind of moderating and facilitating it. But what's been awesome is, like, with our older teens, we don't need to facilitate that as much now. Carolina and I can be with the younger kids, facilitate that, and then the older teens can have the conversation amongst themselves. They don't get wild, they don't get off topic, and then we come together again. Okay, now let's talk about this aspect, yada yada. And there's so that trust is, yeah, great, and we're grateful for it. And then we integrate everybody with the fun times, and they dig that.
Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you coming up here and joining me. I know for me, like, we all just need new ideas. I think we get stuck in what we're doing, and it's just refreshing. I know I learned, like, oh, we should try that. Oh, we should try that. So hopefully this sparks some new ideas for you. And, we just picked these 3 examples, kind of small, medium, and large, if you could call it that, to highlight for you guys to maybe, okay, like, I think we're most similar to the Yees or the Lars or the Lippincott's. So what we're going to do